Cade active return to the field.
Question is, do you want to go back to the field?
I wouldn't put him out there if I didn't think I could cover him.
You unstable?
I've told the board I'm recommending a psych eval. Dr. Lecter, I need you to help me with a psychological profile.
Jack thinks I need therapy.
What you need is a way out of dark places when Jack sends you there.
Last time he sent me into a dark place, I brought something back.
The liver was removed.
He's eating them. Our cannibal loves women. He doesn't want to destroy them. He wants to consume them.
This cannibal you have been getting to know, I think I can help well see his face. What he has is pure empathy. He can assume your point of view, and then maybe some other points of view that scare him.
You make jumps you can't explain,
The evidence explains.
and help me find some evidence.
Whatever he did to the others, he couldn't do it to her.
You think this was a copycat?
You've been terribly rude, Miss Lowndes. What's to be done about that?
What kind of crazy is he?
This girl's killer thought that she was a pig.
Is it harder imagining the thrill somebody else feels killing, now that you've done it yourself?
And this is when it gets truly horrifying.
God forbid we become friendly.
I don't find you that interesting.
You will.
Hi, everyone, and welcome once again to Geek Fest Rants. My name is Carlos Peron, and joining me today I have Tony and Steve. Say hi, gentlemen.
Hi, gentlemen.
I had to ask. It's my fault. Today we are going to be discussing a little bit of this past television season, which we haven't touched in a while. A lot of shows ended. A number of shows were canceled. But there were still a couple of shows that we follow independently, and some of us overlap in what we follow, that touch upon the genre side of the type of stuff we like to cover. So let's begin with some of Tony's favorite shows that we actually, some of us watch too. Tony, which is your entry into this foray?
Well, I mean, basically, I have two shows in common. That's Once Upon a Time and Person of Interest. Both which entered their second season. And both, while I still like them both, I did feel they had a little bit of the second season struggling to...
Ooh, sophomore slump?
Sophomore slump, there you go.
Really?
That's the terminology.
Really? You felt like that?
With Once Upon a Time, sometimes I felt like they kept... Again, we were discussing this before the tape recorder was rolling.
Off mic, Tony.
But
God, I think you got to college. He went to college. He studied this.
Sorry.
I thought I was the one who wasn't technically.
when I'm put on the spot, I don't take that quickly.
It's all that Man of Steel hatred in it.
Yes.
Throws him off.
Anyway, a lot of stories, especially Once Upon a Time, some of the stories is like the bad character's quest for redemption, like Rumpelstiltskin and the Evil Queen. And what I felt like this season is both characters had kind of progressed to a place where they were maturing, where they were willing to kind of admit the wrong they had done in the past. But then it seemed like they were trying to stretch the story out, so they kept doing things to
Put them
kind
back
of
to
push
square
them
one?
back to square one.
Like they
and
progress
then,
so far, and then you're like, oh, here we go.
and then they're going back again, and then and in a way, I liked the way they ended the season because it said that these characters were essentially leaving Storybrooke to go to this different land to deal with this different villain. Now they really had to work together in a completely different context that they did in the show. So I think that opens it up for new storytelling possibilities. But throughout the course of the year, I just thought some storylines I thought were great. I thought Rumpelstiltskin finding...
His son?
Balefire was great, and it turned
Pinocchio?
out that he's, Henry's grandfather and all that.
I love the family connections.
Yes,
very
that
lusty,
was all
very
good.
lusty.
Yeah.
And I even liked when Snow White went dark by helping to kill
Yeah.
the
Regina's
evil
mother.
Regina's
His
mother.
mother,
What was
yeah.
her name?
Barbara Hershey.
Yes. That's it. That's it. Okay, see, all our memories are going. So I like that, and then even when Regina pulled Snow White's heart out of her chest and saw that it had turned a little black, I thought that was kind of interesting.
What did you think of the whole Neverland Peter Pan being like
a
evil
wraith,
ghost type of thing.
Yeah, he's like a wraith.
Well, no, they didn't show Peter Pan.
But his shadow.
You saw like a.
Oh, okay,
yeah. Well, I think there's a lot more to come.
I
with
think
Peter
that's
Pan.
what's being teased for next
maybe
season.
it's almost like essentially they've to a degree reformed Rumpelstiltskin and the Evil Queen, so now they're setting Peter Pan up as the new bad guy too.
Well, that was what I was going to interject. Is that what's going to happen? You know, how often can you keep doing this to Rumpel and Regina?
Yeah.
You know, ideally, I'm sure they want this show to go 6-7 years.
Yeah.
And you know, do we bring new villains into the mix,
or you just go back and forth?
Because I mean, in a way, with Ben Linus on Lost, it worked. They managed to stretch his redemption out over 5 years, and it worked.
Yeah.
But with this, it just, I don't think they could have stretched it out much further without really pushing the possibilities of believability for the characters.
Now, what's the deal with the spin-off they're making out of this?
Oh yeah, there's a spin-off
Once
with
Upon a
Alice
Time
in Wonderland.
Yeah, I haven't really read that much about it. I know there's a trailer.
I saw the trailer. I'm wondering.
I know the Mad Hatter. Is the Mad Hatter in it?
I was just going to broach the question: is this going to be connected to Once Upon a Time, or is it going to be its own animal? Because you have been to Wonderland and you've seen the Mad Hatter, and what's his name? Sebastian Stan plays the Mad Hatter.
I get the impression it's supposed to be its own entity with maybe somebody will cross over.
I think Tony's right. I really don't think that that's going to have too much of a deep connection. Because I don't think, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we ever saw Alice in Once Upon a Time. We just saw Wonderland. We saw the Queen and the Mad Hatter
subjects.
And
did we ever see the Queen of Hearts? I feel
that's
what's
what I'm
her
saying,
name?
the Queen of Hearts.
Yeah.
I thought we saw her.
Well, wasn't that Regina's mother?
Was that
am I
Regina's
thinking
mother?
of?
I think it
wasn't
was one of the main
She had been
characters.
banished when Regina banished her. She had been.
Is that where she went?
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's funny because when Once Upon a Time first started, it was also at the same time that Grimm had started.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like,
oh,
wow, two shows about fairy tale characters at the same time. How are they going to compete against, how are you going to do that? But obviously, Once Upon a Time went in one direction and Grimm went in a completely different direction.
Well, what I would say about the two of them, because I watched them both, is Once Upon a Time is sort of the A show, and Grimm is sort of the B show. And not to say that Grimm is schlocky.
It's the X-Files.
It's totally different, and it doesn't have the lofty aspirations that Once Upon a Time has in terms of good and evil and redemption and all those kind of deep themes that we saw in shows like Lost.
It's a straight Freak of the Week show.
Yeah, pretty much. But
that's the concept.
That's the concept, and I'm totally okay with it.
Yeah, the second season, again, it was the whole. We know the plot because the plot is always the same. It's who knows what, and once they learn it, how long do they stay on the show?
Well, the interesting thing I thought not interesting with Grimm, I like the fact that like his partner was in on everything.
Finally knows. His
but
girlfriend.
the whole season-long nonsense with the girlfriend and the amnesia and this blah, blah, blah. That to me, I still like the show, but it really drew it out.
That took a while.
Yeah.
To me, that's almost a spin-off into Person of Interest. One of my issues with the show was as soon as somebody finds out that Reese and Finch are helping, it's like they conveniently get killed by somebody else.
And that's a very common trick that they use in a lot of shows in the past where too much people know knowledge, they have to go.
But I like it when shows don't do that. That's the easiest thing in the world to do.
Can you make it work?
Can you make it work?
Right.
Exactly. And that's why I like that on Grimm. And with Person of Interest,
I thought they were killing characters off almost too quickly. Like even what Taraji Henson's cop boyfriend there who got knocked off by the
he lasted
political.
a while.
It was a little while, but not even that long.
He was starting to develop a little bit.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting.
Again, I still like the show. Where I would fault it is I think it got a little too deep into the mythology almost, to the point where I was having trouble kind of following who's zooming who and honestly, my favorite parts, going back to Man of Steel, the conversation was the human moments in the finale about Harold Finch. He wanted to shut the project down, and he winds up responsible for
That's
his
my favorite part of the show is all that old stuff that they continually tease you with, and it's like, oh.
So I loved all that stuff. I just thought this season they got almost a little too complex. And honestly, I was surprised Fusco didn't get killed off because they barely used him lately.
Well, that was the thing. I was
Since the first season, you were expecting to die every episode.
Once they brought Taraji's, what's her name?
Detective Carter, Joss Carter.
Once they brought her in, I thought that he became irrelevant. and I was surprised that
He was the inside cop man. You know,
Right.
that's where.
Now
but
she
now
is.
she can give him information. But
But
he's like the dirty cop.
he's like the real dirty cop.
Even though he's not anymore, but
No,
he
he's
kind of-
reformed.
Yeah, he's
and-
reformed, but
and
I
she kind of dirtied herself to save his life.
yes.
And that was actually an interesting thing. The fact that she got Elias out of jail in the season finale. That was an interesting
I
twist
love
that I
Elias.
didn't.
He's a great actor.
I love
Great
Enrico
character.
Colantoni.
and that particular
I
character
love
he
him.
plays, he crafts him very well.
Oh, he's a terrific actor.
Yes.
He can do anything. But, Person of Interest is one of those shows that has. Well, I guess you could compare it to X-Files. You could even compare it to, like, The Incredible Hulk if you want to go that far back. You have an arc, and you have every week, they have to save somebody.
Yeah.
Every week. And that, to me, was like the thing about the Hulk. He was always searching for a cure, but yet in his travels, he always met somebody that he had to help, and they have to service that story, in the midst of an arc that they hope is going to last.
Right,
them
they
a
got to
good-
balance those out, and they can't be too like jarring when you switch from one to the other.
Yeah.
It has to flow
and
evenly.
and a lot of times this season they've integrated them because now there was just like this one, I don't remember his name, this one bad guy in maybe the season finale who had also been in a previous show having to do with an assassination, and he's connected to the computer thing.
Well, don't forget
that's
also,
what got so complex.
There was that other couple who were like Finch and Reese, the woman and the guy, and
Oh,
the guy
them I
gets
liked.
killed.
Yeah, yeah.
Sarah
And
Shahi.
the girl
Yeah,
was
yeah.
That's her name, the actress's name.
Shahi, yeah.
wasn't she the daughter
She was-
on Lost? Ben Linus's daughter?
No,
she
that
wasn't Ben
her.
Linus.
Are you sure?
She was
No.
on a show called Life with Damian Lewis, who's on
Ooh.
Homeland.
Oh yeah.
He
I
was
remember
on for
that
a couple
show.
of years.
Yeah.
She was the cop. She was his
Okay,
partner.
but are you sure?
No, that was
I'm
not
positive.
Ben Linus's
It's not
daughter.
Ben
No,
Linus's
that was
daughter.
not her.
I'm gonna have to
Absolutely
look
not.
it- look it up,
Ben
you're wrong.
Linus's daughter just played Jodie Arias. If you just want a fact on Ben Linus's daughter, I just threw that in.
Carlos doesn't know current events.
Where
It's
am I
okay.
right now?
Yeah.
Never mind. All right, going back to the TV show.
Yeah, so you had those sort of parallel characters, and now she's kind of brought in as an ally of Reese, sort of kind of an ally.
Yeah.
I think the mythology of the machine and everything, it got a little complex.
It's getting even heavier because
you
now
know-
the machine is like it's helping Root and it's helping Finch and it's almost like it's becoming Hal in 2001.
Skynet.
It's developing a
It's
mind of its
Skynet.
own. So I guess that's the way they want to go down. But
And I'm just wondering how long Finch and Reese can operate. With all this heat that's coming down on them from the government, from HR, they're surrounded by enemies. And also, too, it's like every time the noose seems to tighten on them, they get out of it.
yeah,
It seems
Well,
a
you
little
can't
convenient.
have an entire season of them in jail.
no,
No, you
Yeah,
can't.
person of interest. He's going to solve the crime in jail.
he was in jail for at least that one episode or
Yes,
two, I think.
2 episodes.
But I think it was like the number 5 or 6 show for the season.
Yeah,
So-
and
That's not bad.
and that show just kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, I gave it a shot because of its Lost pedigree. That's why I really started to watch the show, and it grew on me slowly, and I really do enjoy it. I mean, Tony's points are well taken, but I really did enjoy.
I enjoyed it too,
Yeah.
and I think it's Caviezel and Michael Emerson, just
Emerson.
have a gravitas and chemistry together. They have that chemistry where you can get those lighter, jokey moments
Yes.
between the two of them and laugh and
I
then
love
move on to the next
I
thing.
love the dialogue.
Yeah, me too.
The rapport that they have.
And the dog. They have a
and
dog.
Bear.
Now Bear, yeah,
I
he's a
love the
nice
dog.
addition.
I hope Bear doesn't die. I really hope. I don't want something to happen to
See if
him.
he gets a script and all his pages are ripped out. Damn it.
But yeah, and then you have like Amy Acker, and you have all these other characters, and it's like, holy Jesus, who's zooming who?
Yeah, what he said. Back in the nose. A 80s reference for everybody. Steve, tell us about Arrow, because you were watching it since the beginning. I'm
Well-
still waiting to watch it.
Yeah, with
How does it hold out in terms of superhero shows?
Well, I think it holds out very well. Once Smallville finally went off the air after 10 long years, which I watched, Arrow came along as sort of its superhero replacement.
Is it
and-
very WB-ish?
That's CW, Carlos. It does service the CW demographic, but it also works. My wife likes it. And my wife, I kind of fooled her. I said, "Oh, there's this new show. He's a vigilante." I didn't say he was a superhero. I didn't say he was the Green Arrow.
And he likes to wear a costume.
And I said, we've watched shows like this before, and I think she likes him because he's hot, which is fine, because I just want to watch the show. It does. Yes, it does have that CW feel, and it takes the character into sort of a modern setting. The Green Arrow character in the comics was kind of like social activist, like borderline hippie. He was created in the 40s, but he had this rebirth in the late 60s where he was sort of the voice of the counterculture.
So he's not even what Smallville turned him into.
No.
Billionaire.
Well, he's a millionaire. He's a billionaire,
philanthropist.
whatever. Yeah, no, he's all that.
But he was on the island.
He was on the island
with the castaways from Lost.
Yes,
all over
okay.
and that's the thing. They do
There you
kind of
go.
rip off from Lost the idea of the flashbacks. You know, in every show, there's a flashback that is like an A story and a B story. But honestly, to be truthful, I don't so much like the island stuff. I like the stuff that goes on in the present, traditional superhero stuff. And they bring in a lot of the villains from the comic, but with a sort of much more realistic spin. They've had like Count Vertigo, and they've introduced the Speedy character, who's his partner, Green Arrow and Speedy. I should say will be his partner. Also, the Black Canary character, she's there, but she's not going to become Black Canary for a long time. And I like it. It's not amazing, mind-blowing, but it has enough of its comic book
It
roots.
fills your need.
It fills my need, fills my void. You know, I like the interpretation of the character. I could do without the soapier elements of the show, which, like I said, is the more CW, the conventions of the CW. But I think that anybody who likes the character from the comic would find this show enjoyable. This was its first season. Yeah, so it's
I'm waiting
been
for it. Like I
renewed.
said, I'm waiting for it on pay-per-view or DVD or something.
You know, it's been renewed, and I think it's well worth it.
Well, let's hit a couple of the creepier shows now that some of us are watching. And for some reason, this particular season, it's almost like, and it always happens, it's like one person gets an idea and like everybody's trying to do a similar version of it. Could be coincidence, who the hell knows. But I have 3 shows I want to go over. Bates Motel, The Following, and Hannibal. Now, I know The Following was the first one to come out, and that's the one with Kevin Bacon, where we talked about a while back that it was coming, and we finally saw the whole series. It was a short series. It's one of these short
13 episodes.
You know, half a season type of things. And at first, I found it very compelling, entertaining, creepy. But at a certain point, to me, it started to turn into 24. It was, yes, you were always waiting for something to happen, but then it was like, oh, now this guy's the bad guy. And then tomorrow this is the bad guy. And then you get to play a guessing game of who is the least likely to be the bad guy this week and trying to guess if that person turns into the bad guy.
Well, there was that, and there was also the element of convenience. You know what I'm saying? Like 24. Like,
Yeah.
you know, how are you going to get out of it this week? And how are you going to get out of it this week? And it just feels kind of trite and like, really?
Like the bad guy, everything is pre-planned. So no matter what happens, no matter how random things look, it was
They're
always
not
part
random.
of the plan.
It was always part of the plan. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, at first there was a great setup. The show was a great setup and really pretty graphic to a certain
For
extent.
network television,
Yeah. And at first it was one of these shows where the episode ends and you're like, oh no, where's the next one? It was that kind of a show.
Yeah.
But to me, that kind of started going away. How about you?
I sort of felt like it had a great beginning, a bloated middle, and then I kind of liked the end. I think it heated up towards the end.
Really?
The very, very end, I'm not sure I'm on board with, but I was starting to get that vibe in the middle, and I'm like, I stuck with it. And then I like Kevin Bacon. I thought he was really good in it. And I liked James Purefoy, the villain. I always remember the actor's name, but not the character's name. And I liked him. I thought he was a real just...
But again, it's one of these shows where it's like you say to yourself, in a way like Once Upon a Time when he first started, it's like, how long can you keep this particular
How long
premise
can you
up?
sustain the premise?
In other
Yeah.
words, how long can he be the bad guy? In other words, season 2, is he going to turn into a good guy and help Kevin
Or
Bacon?
is he dead?
Or is he dead? Because it looks like he's dead. I
Yeah.
don't know. But now he's got his people hunting him
Everywhere.
down. And obviously, I'm sure Kevin Bacon's not dead because you can't kill everybody on your show. But it's like, okay, well, we'll see what they do next. And to me, it was a little disappointing, the ending, the way it progressed. It got a little repetitive for me.
It did get repetitive, yeah.
The other show that, again, it all kind of came around the same time was Bates Motel. It was apparently done by
Carlton Cuse.
Carlton Cuse from Lost, another Lost graduate. And this one, they're basically redoing the story, but they're setting it in a modern time.
Right.
And,
Well, they're doing the backstory.
right, granted, the movie came out, in the 60s?
No, 50s. I
50s?
think.
1960.
60?
Was it 60s?
So I guess the original backstory would have taken place in the
It's like
late 40s or
right, but
something.
Yeah, it's like a reboot, like Superman.
Right.
So,
But obviously the sets are like they reconstructed everything almost exactly the same. It looks just like the same motel. The house is up on the hill, and it's him as a teenager in high school
with mother.
With mother and all the weird, creepy people that live in that town. And that's one of the first things I noticed was that to me the show reminded me of Twin Peaks without any supernatural elements in terms of there's some behind the scenes stuff going on in the town and people's homes that you don't even want to know about. And it's almost just as creepy as Norman himself.
Right.
Speaking of Lost, Nestor Carbonell, is that his name?
Yeah.
He's from Lost and he's in the show. He plays the sheriff. And I swear to God, the first time you look at him, he looks just like Anthony Perkins. And I don't know if that was done on purpose, but he looks just like him. He's got the short hair. And I don't understand how that happen. But every character has a secret. Every character is up to something creepy.
That does sound very Twin Peaksy.
Yeah, and you get to see the little bits and pieces of Norman Bates' personality starting to develop from everything that's happening around them. The mother is really weird and strange, and all these other characters are doing stuff that you could say, okay, this is where he picks up like his taxidermy skills from, and this is where he gets his fascination with certain women, and this is where he picks up this and that. And I think it's been one of the surprise shows for me because it just keeps building and building and building and introducing parts of the story that I never thought of that they could do with a simple, serial killer type of story. Even though Psycho had a couple of sequels they made.
3. They made 4
and
movies.
a remake at one point.
3 sequels and a remake, yeah.
I think this gives you even more information that you never got on these other movies. And it's actually interesting. The guy who plays Norman Bates, he's a very good young actor. He's been in some movies, and you can kind of see it in his eyes that he plays them good.
Yeah.
And again, one of these short season shows, I can't wait for it to come back. The third one of the creepy shows, I believe Steve also seen it, is the Hannibal show. NBC's is Hannibal. Talk about a visual show. Tony, I will suggest never watching the show.
I'm not big into serial killer shows anyway.
I have,
Holy cow.
This is the most graphic show I've ever seen in terms of, now granted, it's not graphic in terms of what happens.
Yeah, like the following is bloody throat slitting and nastiness, but the creativity of the kills is
the displaying because again you're dealing with certain serial killers in a way like Hannibal Lecter, because Hannibal Lecter is it's strange because
he's
the show
cultured.
It's a show about Hannibal Lecter, but he's really not the central character. Will Graham is the central character. Obviously, all these characters are based on the original novel, the Red Dragon book, but they take the characters and they mess around with them a little bit. I keep seeing names pop up that it's like, oh, I remember that character. I remember this character. But if you think like a CSI show is the most graphic thing you could see, no, this show is really pushing it. This is like Walking Dead material you're dealing with here in a way.
But as jarring as the images
visually,
it's
amazing.
visually arresting, but the characters are, Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal is just, I almost think he's better than Anthony Hopkins in the role. He's made it his own.
I can't stop thinking of Anthony Hopkins but he does a great job. He brings a whole new thing.
Yeah, let's put it this way. I didn't think anybody could do the role justice after Anthony Hopkins.
There you go.
This guy has his own spin on it, but he's still retaining the roots of the character, the culturedness, the sense that he only kills the rude or the people who don't, well, maybe not.
Well, here's the thing. You have to be careful with a show like this that you don't turn Hannibal into an anti-hero. In other words, you don't want him to turn him into a Freddy Krueger type of character where at first you fear him and then you're cheering for him because it's just become a slasher
Yeah, but
thing.
I don't think that happened
in this show.
Season.
He's taking advantage of other serial killers by kind of disguising his acts underneath.
And he's manipulating them.
He's manipulating them, and then he's like doing his own thing.
And he's also manipulating Will.
And throwing everybody off track.
Right.
Would you say the show glamorizes evil through the character of Hannibal?
No, I don't. I wouldn't.
No.
I wouldn't.
No. You know what it is? It's
or maybe for the already twisted, perhaps.
You could say that about just about anything that has violence in it, but it's definitely an investigative show. They're always investigating the murder of the week.
But they're all kind of connected.
They're all kind of connected because they're very extreme, unusual murders.
And they bring in Will because Will has that ability to get inside the motivations of a
from
serial
the original
killer.
book, if you saw Manhunter or Red Dragon, the remake, that is the thing about Will Graham, is that he can, it's that behavioral sciences, the person that can recreate the crimes, and they can get into the mind of the serial killer and reenact in their mind, hopefully not for real, what happened there.
But
So
he's
that's how-
losing his grip.
Right. He doesn't understand his own, I don't want to say powers, but his own skills. So he sometimes thinks he's losing his mind. But I guess in reality, he's not losing his mind. He's just,
Well, he has like OCD,
it's
right?
his
or
skill.
something.
It's his particular thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny. The thing I like about the show is that you get to meet these characters that we've already met on some of the movies in
yeah.
Silence of the Lambs and stuff like
Like
that.
Chilton.
Yeah, the doctor's there, and as the show progresses, Hannibal is inviting them all to dinner, and he's feeding them his victims, and nobody knows what's going on, and because Hannibal is supposed to be this refined,
Cultured.
expert in cuisine, and he's like, this is a lamb stew with a hint of this, and the people are, it's delicious. How? And then you see him in the kitchen, chopping things up, and it's like, oh my god. But like I said, it is not for the weak stomach individuals. But visually, and the other thing I noticed about this show is sound. And I never noticed sound for television. They do some really interesting sound effects that you get if you have a sound system. You get to listen all these weird separations of sound that they do that I've never heard before. And again, short season, half season, renewed, just like these other shows we talked about. Very surprised by it. As a matter of fact, because it was such an interesting show, I started reading all the Harris books.
Okay.
So I went through Red Dragon, did Silence of the Lambs. I'm in Hannibal now. I also read Hannibal Rising, which I completely forgot he wrote a fourth one about Hannibal as a young boy during World War II.
Well, they made a movie.
They made a movie, pretty bad movie.
Which I never saw.
But again, what an interesting character. It's such a good character.
Is Hannibal Magneto now, growing up during World War II?
Yeah.
Let's just say they explained how the whole cannibalism thing started.
Okay.
Another thing about the Hannibal show is that we get to see Gillian Anderson from speaking of the X-Files, from the X-Files back in TV, and she looks really good for her. I don't want to say her age because she's probably younger than us, but
I don't know.
I was pretty surprised when I saw her, and it's like, wow, she actually could carry a show still. She hasn't, aged too much, and she's a good kind of counterpart to Hannibal in terms of how she seems to know so much more about him, and he apparently did some weird things to her that we don't know about.
Well, I think they left it sort of open to interpretation at the end of the season as to whether or not she knows Hannibal's secret.
Something about him that he might have done something to her or something like that.
Right.
But it would be interesting to see.
Or not necessarily that he did something to her, that he manipulated someone into doing something to her.
Okay.
I think that might be more the
that
case.
sounds more like his history,
Yeah,
especially in the books I've been reading. But that's one of the things I'm looking forward to the second season is hopefully they'll bring her back and continue her particular twist on the story.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, because I hadn't watched this show and it has been renewed for a second season, but now both of you guys just told me that you were dropping it, Revolution. I would be very interested to know why both of you passed on the show.
I found it interesting at the beginning and promising, but I just wasn't as compelled to watch it as I was with, say, other shows. I felt it getting better from the pilot. The pilot was okay, but I felt it could have been better. And I felt it improving, but I don't know, it was just, I didn't have time. Plus it also, I think it went away for like 2 months
did.
and then
No,
it came
longer than
back
that.
and then
Longer
it
It
went
took
away.
a big holiday break, I think.
Huge, more than 2 months.
Which, yeah, I mean, it's...
Which I think is death for an arc show.
Yeah. I mean, they did that with Lost for a while too, but that I was so invested in.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, to me, season 1 of Lost was one of the best TV seasons ever.
Sure.
So, I mean, I would probably be willing to watch Revolution on DVD to see what I missed,
okay.
but I just didn't keep up with it last year.
I lost track earlier than him. I gave up on it earlier than him for a combination of reasons, including, like he said, not enough time to see all these shows, and this is just another show. But I just had problems with the show in terms of, to me, it looked a little too phony, a little too not very realistic. And I know this is a sci-fi show, and you can say anything is unrealistic, but it just didn't grab me. It just didn't do it. But yes, just like Tony said, and my son also wanted to watch it, and he also didn't have a chance. If they put it up on Netflix or something and it's streamable, we'll probably take a shot at it again, because apparently it's still going.
It was renewed, and I just took a pass right from the beginning because I was like, oh, another post-apocalyptic, blah, blah, blah. But it did have Elizabeth
Mitchell
from Lost.
And Giancarlo, what's his face?
Esposito from Breaking Bad.
Wait till you see him, Tony.
Oh, who I
Great.
love from Breaking Bad, and he's just and Once Upon a Time.
That's right. He was the Mirror.
He's the Mirror.
Oh yeah,
He's a phenomenal
Character
actor.
they just seem to have forgotten about.
he's still
really.
there. He's just doing his thing.
He was in jail, but we never see him anymore.
By the way, in Once Upon a Time, I love the fact, just to get back to that for 1 second.
Book ended with
Well, I love the fact that not only do they hit fairy tales, but they went into Frankenstein, which I loved because they were going into like the Frankenstein movie. I mean, they even put it in black and white.
I was wondering, how could they do that? Is that a Disney property?
No,
I think it might
it's-
be
it's
public domain.
It's public domain. But I love
So
how
couldn't they do
Dracula?
and the
Sure,
Wolfman or
they
something?
could do any of these characters, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. All that stuff is all in the public domain, and I just love the fact that because I love the old horror movies. Not only did they go there, but they went in there visually. You know, they went in there with the same look.
Yes.
Not just being black and white, but the
sets,
the machinery,
the lighting,
the angles, everything. I was just in heaven. I thought that was great. And Dr. Whale, that's James Whale, the director of Frankenstein. That's his name. And it's a nice little homage. I know it's.
I wonder if
kinda
they'll do it again.
tacking
I
onto
wonder if
the-
they'll do it again. Like hit up another one of these
Yeah.
classic creatures.
I don't know how much they're going to be in Storybrooke in the new season and how
Yeah.
much they're going to do in Neverland. So the other thing I didn't like about, again, the closing of Once Upon a Time was the two new characters who were fighting magic. And
Oh, yeah, the guy
they
who
didn't
lost his
really know
father.
how
Oh,
it
the guy who
worked.
lost his dad.
I didn't care.
And
Oh,
the fake
magic is
girlfriend.
unholy. We must eliminate it from the world. To me, it was almost like, you know, the anti-Harry Potter craze. They were trying to kind of bring that into, and I was like, oh, please don't.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to become of that. I mean, hopefully they leave it behind. But that, again, it seemed to be kind of, let's stretch to make 22 episodes.
And that's the thing, you know, this is a larger discussion, but and I'm not pretentious, but I love British television. I absolutely love British television and Doctor Who. And their longest season is 13 episodes, but that's rare. What they tend to do is 6 to 8 episodes a season, but they don't stretch out. You know what I'm saying? Like they would have maybe a 5-series season. They call their season series. 5 series of like 40 episodes. Like they don't feel compelled to run it into the ground. Their actors can be on multiple shows in the same year. You know, there are actors who are on Game of Thrones, which is a co-production, you know, with HBO, or Downton Abbey or whatever, and you know, because they'll do 6 here and then they'll do 6 here, and you know, I like their model better than the American model.
But I think that only really matters in shows that have mythology. And that's mythology is kind of more of a recent thing in American television,
I guess,
isn't
but,
it?
you know, I mean, for a procedural, like a Law and Order kind of thing, you could have 50 episodes a season. It wouldn't matter. And I think that the networks are starting to embrace the cable model because you have The Following and Hannibal, only 13 episode seasons.
Right, and those used to be like summer fillers, and now they're kind of bringing them to
And
the
Hannibal,
normal season.
you could see Hannibal started during the season, so to speak, and it bled over into the summer season when all the repeats started.
But at the same time, you said The Following felt kind of bloated too, even though that was a short.
Yeah. I just like to tell the story. House of Cards, another example. You know, 12 or 13 episodes. Just, you know, tell the story for as long as it needs to be told. Don't drag it.
Well, that
You know?
then that really comes down to making money and commercials.
Yeah.
So that's
And let's keep in mind also, I don't know if you remember, but Hannibal lost an episode because they decided not to
Yes.
play an episode because of some tragedy that had
Yeah.
happened, some shooting, I forget which of the latest shootings,
Yeah.
but they purposely not play an episode
Yes.
because of that, which hopefully, I hope when they put it on DVD, we'll be able to catch
I think it
that
was
episode.
aired in Europe. I've been
but
trying to track it down.
It's hard to find, but hopefully they'll put it so we can catch up on it because it was a pretty important episode.
Yeah.
But you saying something about Doctor Who?
Oh yeah, well, Doctor Who is, you know, again, it's the longest running British series. I think it might be the longest running series ever. I mean, it's been on for 50 years with a bit of I'd say a 15-year break. But I watched that show religiously. I did not watch Doctor Who, the Tom Baker and the Peter Davison and all that stuff. All the stuff that came before Christopher Eccleston. I did see the TV movie that they did in the 90s, the Fox TV movie, but I never watched it prior. But I immediately started watching it with Christopher Eccleston, and I've always enjoyed the show, loved him, I love David Tennant, I love Matt Smith. And this past season, Stephen Moffat has been the showrunner for the last couple of years, since Matt Smith started, and he's written for it, I think, since the very beginning of the reboot, and I think he's great. And, Doctor Who is, I'm certainly not as invested in the mythology of the show. I don't know a lot, but they really seem to honor it. And I thought that this last season was really good. This last half season, because they split it. Like they had Doctor Who with Rory and the other one. Karen Gillan is the actress's name, but they wrote her and her husband out of the series, and they brought in Jenna Louise Coleman as the new companion, Clara. And I thought, of all the companions, I think she's the most interesting. She has a very interesting... Did you watch it?
No.
Oh, you didn't watch it?
I'm
Okay.
behind. I'm like a couple seasons behind.
Oh, okay. I thought she's a fascinating character. Not just her personality, but her very existence is very interesting. What she is, I think, is very interesting. Matt Smith is leaving the show. They've really, in the last couple of episodes, heated things up to a degree of... Supposedly, you know how the Doctor regenerates? Well, supposedly... There's been a regeneration that we knew nothing about. That there was an incarnation of the Doctor that has never been shown before.
A missing season?
A missing Doctor.
Oh.
And the missing Doctor is played by John Hurt. And that was like the cliffhanger of this season. It all plays into Clara and who she is. The 50th anniversary special and the Christmas special, they're really going to sort of blow the doors off the mythology of the character, is how I understand it. And like I said, I'm not as well versed, or from what I gather, it's going to be a real game changer. And I just think it's a fun show. You know how certain science fiction shows really try to, as best they can, put an element of realism, or like this could happen, like the technology could happen. Doctor Who has none of that.
They don't have to explain the technology.
No, it's the who's it's and the what's this and the this and the that and the and the Framestat and the Resnick and the this and the that. They just which is fine. I don't care. I just think it's a really fun show, and I love the time travel element of it, and I just think it's a really fun show, and I'm looking forward to seeing who the next Doctor is going to be.
Well, I'd like to thank Tony and Steve today for joining us on this look back at the past television season for our genre shows, and hope to see you guys here next time on Geek Fest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
You're new. When did you move here?
Last night.
Do you have a girlfriend?
No, just me and my mom.
This is our chance to start over.
Maybe some people don't get to start over.
What do you think?
This is crazy, Mom.
We own a motel, Norman Bates. You're different.
What's so different about me?
I don't know, it's just a feeling I get.
Nowhere is like this. People in this town, they deal with things in a different way.
You got a warrant to search your house? No, Mother, there's something wrong with me.
Don't be scared. I'm going to protect you. You don't think about the future or what's going to happen when you grow up?
It's all gonna be good, Norman.
Stop.
I agree with Tony.